What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the specs of the Samsung Galaxy S4 Active to the Sony Xperia Z. Now the S4 Active has just been announced today, and it's like Samsung are covering pretty much all of the bases when it comes to smartphones right now. And the Sony Xperia Z, one of the biggest advantages that it had over other devices such as the S4 original was the fact that it's dust and water resistant. Now with the S4 Active, that's all changed. So how different are both of these devices? Well, do hit that thumbs up button and let's find out in this head-to-head spec comparison. Now starting off with the screen sizes, both have a 5-inch screen, so very similar there. Both at 1080p as well, 1920 by 1080, 441 ppi, so very high pixel density on both of these devices. Very nice here. One of the things to note is that the S4 Active does have a glove touch technology, so you are going to be able to use the device with gloves. Very good, especially for the device. The fact that it's a rugged device, you're going to be able to use it with gloves. It's going to be quite useful for that feature. Now moving on in terms of dimensions, now the S4 Active is slightly bigger, 0.7 millimeters in height, 0.3 millimeters in width, and 1.2 millimeters in thickness. So it is a slightly larger device than the Sony Xperia Z, especially in terms of thickness. So it is slightly more thicker. Now it really depends on how important that is to you. In terms of weight, the S4 Active 151 grams, whereas the Sony Xperia Z 146 grams. 5 grams heavier the S4 Active is. Again, nothing huge here. Build wise, the S4 Active, they've got diamond patterned plastic, so that's more of a rugged plastic compared to the S4 original. The Sony Xperia Z on the other hand has the shatterproof and scratch resistant glass, so it's got glass on both sides. Now in terms of the resistance, the S4 Active IP67 dust and water resistant, whereas the Sony Xperia Z is IP57 dust and water resistant. So the S4 Active does have a slightly higher rating, but they're pretty much both going to give you that underwater experience up to 1 meter, up to 30 minutes. But very nice feature here. You're not going to have to worry about dropping one of these phones, in a puddle or anywhere in water, or getting some water spilt over it. That's going to be a really big advantage, especially considering the price of these phones. In terms of the different versions available, the S4 Active, you've got the urban grey, the dive blue, and the orange flare. So you've got some different options here. And the Sony Xperia Z, you've got the black, white, and also the purple version as well. So 3 different options on both of these sides here. Now, as I mentioned, in terms of the Sony Xperia Z, the dust and water resistant feature was something that was quite unique to it. But now that is no longer the case because the S4 Active does now have this feature, which is absolutely great. In terms of the processor, the Samsung Galaxy S4 Active has the quad-core 1.9 GHz processor. Now it's the same one as you find on the S4, the most commonly used S4 anyway. There is the Exynos Octa for the S4 original, but currently they've not said anything about this coming on to the S4 Active. So you've got the same 1.9 GHz chip, the Sony Xperia Z quad-core 1.5 GHz processor on here. So the S4 Active does have a higher clock speed on the processor, and in terms of benchmarks with the original S4, the S4 does have higher benchmarks than the Sony Xperia Z, so it is probably going to be that much better in terms of performance. Internal memory, the S4 Active 16GB version, as well as the Sony Xperia Z, the 16GB versions. Now the S4 original does have the additional 32 and 64GB versions. The S4 Active, they've currently just said 16GB, so we're not sure if we're going to be seeing any of the devices in the future, but for now anyway, the 16GB versions, both of these do have expandable memory up to 64GB via a micro SD card, so that's really great having that expansion there, which we're starting to see less of in other devices right now. So that's really great to see on both of these devices. In terms of RAM, both have 2GB of RAM, so pretty consistent there. Very good for multitasking, etc. Really nice to have this level of RAM on both of these devices. Now looking at the cameras, the S4 Active just has an 8 megapixel camera, whereas the Sony Xperia Z has a 13 megapixel camera. So the S4 Active, they have cut down the megapixels here, and that is a little bit disappointing because I would have liked to have seen a 13 megapixel camera as the S4 has, but they've gone for the S3 resolution, which was the 8 megapixel camera. Now both of these are going to be able to film in 1080p. However, the S4 Active does have an additional mode. It's the Aqua mode, they're calling it. So when you switch that on, that's going to give you some optimized features for using the camera underwater. So that's going to be really great to see, something a little bit different, and they've looked out for this market here as well. Front-facing cameras, the Sony Xperia Z 2.2 megapixels front-facing camera at 1080p HD. The S4 Active 1.9 megapixels. Now they've not confirmed if this is going to be 1080p HD. I would assume so, especially if they want to be competing, but they've not confirmed this specifically as yet. In terms of the operating systems, both run Android Jelly Bean. The S4 Active 4.2.2, so the latest version of Jelly Bean is going to be on there with the TouchWiz, Samsung's TouchWiz UI. The Sony Xperia Z, you've got 4.1.2 out of the box. Now there may be an update soon on to Jelly Bean 4.2, but currently it is 4.1.2, and they have, I believe, the Timescape UI. Now I'm not specifically sure what the name is of the Sony UI. They don't advertise it as much as the S4, but you are going to get that custom skin on top of both of these devices, on top of the default Android on here. Now just to mention a few of the features that have also come onto the S4 Active from the S4 original. You've got Smart Scroll, Smart Pause, as well as Air View and Air Gestures. So these are going to be really quite useful for you to, you know, do certain things on your phones without actually touching it as well, which is pretty cool. And you've also got the infrared IR blaster as well on the S4 Active, so you're going to be able to control your TV, etc. with the S4 Active. Pretty cool here. Now a battery, the S4 Active has a lithium ion 2600 milliamp battery. Now this is removable, whereas the Sony Xperia Z 2330 milliamp battery, but that's not removable, so that is going to be in the device. With the S4 Active you have that option of replacing the battery or carrying around a spare as well, and it is a higher milliamp battery, so you may be seeing a slightly more usage on the S4 Active than the Sony Xperia Z. Now in terms of price, the Sony Xperia Z is currently going for around £450 to £500 here in the UK. In the US, roughly about $550 to $600. The S4 Active, they've not been specific about prices. Now the S4 original currently is between £500 to £550 or between $600 to $650. I would expect it to be around the similar price point, hopefully a little bit lower as well because of that slight cut down in some of the features, but you've got the ruggedness, etc. So I'd expect it to be somewhere around that price mark at the same time. In terms of release, they've said summer 2013. There's not any specifics as such. I will be adding those into the description below as soon as I've got further information. So those were the key differences in spec between these two devices. I think Sony is in a bit of a pickle now because what was the unique selling point of its Sony Xperia Z is no longer unique. Now the S4 original has been outselling the Sony Xperia Z in terms of the recent sales, but now that we have the Samsung Galaxy S4 Active, that changes the game as well now, because it offers people out there who do want a more rugged and a more sturdy device, which is going to have the waterproof and dust resistant feature on there. It's going to give them another option now, so that's going to be interesting to see what goes on. Which device would you go for? Would you go for the Sony Xperia Z or would you go for the Samsung Galaxy S4 Active? Do drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, as always, please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to the channel? I've got plenty more videos coming up in here. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV, and I'll see you next time.